Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridhan bi qada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. We offer our condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Hujjah. We offer our condolences to Rasulullah on this tragic day of Ashura. We offer our condolences to Ali al-Murtada. We offer our condolences to Lady Fatima al-Zahra for the tragedy of their son Hussein on the day of Ashura. In the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein that our 12th Imam reads, the 12th Imam says that indeed the messenger became distressed and his depressed heart wept over the day of Ashura. Our 12th Imam says that the angels and the prophets offered their condolences to Rasulullah over the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The 12th Imam says that your mother Az-Zahra became distressed and bereft over your tragedy, O Hussein. The 12th Imam says that the legions of the angels came in waves to offer their condolences to your father Hussein, to Amir al-Mu'mineen. The 12th Imam says that the majalis and the matam were held in the highest levels of heaven for you, Ya Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Brothers and sisters, it's the day of Ashura, the day that Abu Abdullah, Imam Hussein, lost everything on this day. The morning of Ashura started with the Jamaat prayers, with the family and the friends surrounding Abu Abdullah. But one after the other, the enemies would come and kill one after the other of the companions of Abu Abdullah. Eventually, after the time of Dhuhr had finished and companions had given their lives, and every single companion had given their lives on the day of Ashura, and after the family had all given their lives on the day of Ashura, and that young 6-month-old child, Ali al-Asghar, was the last one to give his life on the day of Ashura, there was but one person standing in the camp of Hussein. That was Abu Abdullah Hussein himself. The day began in prayers and in remembrance of Allah, and it would end with one man giving his head in sajda back to Allah. Brothers and sisters, it was on the day of Ashura, at a time just like this, that Abu Abdullah looked around at his tents, and he realized that none of his companions were left, that none of the family members of his were left. That afternoon, Ali al-Akbar had given the adhan, but even Ali al-Akbar is now gone. Hazrat Abul Fadl Abbas has left this world. As Abu Abdullah lets out that one last request where he says, Ama min hal min nasirin yansurna, hal min mughithin yughithuna, hal min dhabin yadhubbu an harmi Rasulullah. That is there anybody out there to come and give their support to us, the Ahlul Bayt? Is there anybody out there to come and give the family of the Prophet support and a hand on this day of Ashura? As we know that Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, he responded to the call of his father. He says, Labbaik ya Abu Abdullah. But Imam Hussein knows that Imam Zainul Abidin is the carrier of the imamat, that he can't be on the plains of Ashura. Eventually Imam Hussein takes all the ladies and children into the tent. He bids farewell to each and every one of the women. He bids farewell to each and every one of the children on the day of Ashura. He bids farewell to his son Zainul Abidin. He goes and he transfers over the legacy of the imamat over to Imam Zainul Abidin. As Abu Abdullah then begins to go towards the battlefield, he makes one last request of the enemy forces. He says that, do you know what you're about to do? You're about to seal your own doom. Two of the individuals from the enemy camps, they come to Abu Abdullah. Imam Hussein addresses them. He says that you yourselves have sent me letters come to Kufa. They reject the pleas of Imam Hussein. They reject all of the calls of Imam Hussein, brothers and sisters. Before Imam Hussein makes that last trip, he goes one last time to the tent to bid that last farewell. Some of the writers of Maqtal mention that Lady Zainab, that Imam Hussein asked Lady Zainab to bring Zuljana towards him. As Lady Zainab brings Zuljana towards him, she tells Abu Abdullah, she says, "Oh Hussein, I don't bring Zuljana towards you for you to leave us, that I want you to die, but I know that this is the eventual end, that it is going to happen on this day." As Imam Hussein mounts the horse of Zuljana, he begins to proceed slowly towards the battlefield. But at one moment, Zuljana stops. The trusty horse of Imam Hussein stops. He won't move forward. He won't move back. And then all of a sudden, Zuljana begins to move his head and he points it to the ground, as if he's telling Abu Abdullah that, "Look towards the ground, O my master." As Imam Hussein begins to look to the ground, he sees his young daughter Sakina. He sees his young daughter Sakina. She wants one last embrace with her father. When she was a young child, she used to sleep on the chest of Abu Abdullah. It was one of the ways that she would go to sleep. It was one of the ways that she would find comfort. She tells her father, she says, "Oh my dear father," she says, "I have seen the tragedies of this day of Ashura. I know that whoever goes to the battlefield, that they don't return back alive." She says, "Oh my dear father, I know that it's your time to go." But she says that, "Will you come down off of your horse one last time? Would you let your little daughter sleep on your chest one last time before you go towards the battlefield?" Although Hussein is tired and broken, he's seen so much grief and tragedy on this day. He gives to his daughter, he comes off of the horse, he lays on the hot sands of Karbala. Young Sakina goes on top of the chest of her dear father. She begins to rest on the chest of her dear father. The same chest that will be pierced by arrows in a few moments. The same chest that will be pierced by the spears of the enemy forces. Young Sakina sleeps on the chest. He welcomes his daughter on top of him. She goes to sleep. She's only there for a few seconds, but she falls asleep. As Hussein is breathing, as he sees his daughter on top of him, that last embrace between the father and daughter. All of a sudden, Sakina wakes up. She wakes up and she says, "Oh my dear father," she says, "Go to the battlefield, go very fast." Imam Hussein is perplexed. He's wondering, why is his daughter in such a push for him to leave? And young Sakina says, "Oh my dear father, in those few minutes I fell asleep. I saw Bibi Fatima, I saw your mother Fatima Zahra, I saw my grandmother, and she was telling me, 'Let my son come to me.'" The 6-month-old Sakina comes off of the chest of her father. They bid that last farewell. She makes her way back to the tents with the ladies. Imam Hussein mounts back onto Zuljana to make that last trip. He tells Zuljana that this will be the last time that he'll have to carry Hussein to the battlefield. Imam Hussein proceeds into the desert, and immediately the enemies begin to attack. Some of the enemies run away because of the fright of Abu Abdullah. The historians say that as they looked at the face of Hussein, although he was a man who had seen so much pain in these hours on the day of Ashura, but still they say his face was glowing with light. His face was beaming with nur of the light of Allah on this day of Ashura. Some of the enemies were too scared to attack him directly, so from wherever they were, they began to throw rocks at the head of Abu Abdullah. They began to throw rocks against the body of Abu Abdullah. Although he was tired and weary from this day, Abu Abdullah still goes towards the battlefield. He fights bravely against the enemy soldiers of Umar ibn Asad. He has one last opportunity at this point. Many of the enemy forces run away, so Abu Abdullah makes one last trip back to the tents. He pays his respects to the family. He says one last farewell to Imam Zainul Abidin, and he knows that from this point on it will be no more. As Abu Abdullah goes back into the battlefield, the enemies have developed a bit more courage. They begin to throw rocks at Abu Abdullah. They begin to taunt Abu Abdullah. They begin to make fun of Abu Abdullah. A point where it becomes when people begin to shoot arrows at the body of Imam Hussein. Eventually the attacks increase. We're told that one enemy shoots an arrow, and this arrow lands right into the forehead of Abu Abdullah. The arrow pierces the forehead. Imam Hussein has the energy to pull the arrow out. The blood begins to fall off of his forehead into his eyes. And as he begins to clean the blood off of his eyes, the arrows begin to increase. The number of arrows begin to increase until the point where Abu Abdullah's body becomes covered by arrows. People begin to then pelt him with stones. Whatever they have at their disposal, they begin to throw against the body of Abu Abdullah. Eventually, as some of the writers of Maqtal mention, that Abu Abdullah is about to fall off his horse. He's about to fall off his horse, but he doesn't land on the ground. The historians say that his body resembled like a porcupine. He had so many arrows on his body that it was neither touching the ground, that it was elevated over the ground. Eventually, as the arrows began to break under the weight of the body of Hussein alayhi salam, people began to circle around him. They couldn't come and attack him one by one, so they began to circle around. People would come and kick at the head of Abu Abdullah. They would begin to kick at the body of Abu Abdullah. People would come and kick in the face of Imam Hussein. People would take their swords and begin to jab into the body of Abu Abdullah. This is where the writers of Maqtal mention that after Hussein had been killed, it was over 100 cuts and wounds had been on his body. It was from the arrows that had hit him on the day of Ashura. It's from the swords that had pierced into his skin on the day of Ashura. As Hussein lays in this state and the enemies continue to circle around him, like vultures, they begin to peck at him, to hit him, to throw whatever it is that they have at him. Eventually a man comes along and he kicks Abu Abdullah. He kicks him till he's back onto his back. As they get closer, the enemy forces narrate that they've never seen such a beautiful face. Although he's about to go back to Allah, he's still remembering Allah. He still murmurs under his breath, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridan bi qada'ihi wa tasliman li amri. He keeps repeating those verses of the Quran. He keeps saying, Bismillahi wa billah, wa fi sabilillah, wa ala millati rasulillah. Eventually, brothers and sisters, Imam Hussein in this state, Harmala once again has been told by Umar ibn Sa'ad, Harmala, that same one that shot that arrow into the neck of young Ali al-Asghar just a few moments before the Abu Abdullah, Harmala is once again told to get ready for another arrow. And Harmala begins to find that three-pronged arrow to shoot into the neck of Abu Abdullah. As Harmala shoots the arrow into the neck, as the blood begins to pour out of the body of Abu Abdullah, as arrows begin to fly, as the attacks begin to multiply in Abu Abdullah, Umar ibn Sa'ad Mal'un gives one last command. He tells that cursed Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, he says, go and end the life of this man. As we know, brothers and sisters, that Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, the cursed, he goes towards Abu Abdullah. He takes his sword out of the sheath that he has. As the 12th Imam says in Ziyarat al-Nahiya, where he says that Shimr was jalisun ala sadrihi, that Shimr is sitting on the chest of Abu Abdullah. He grabs Imam Hussein by the beard, he lifts the head up and he takes his sword against the neck of Abu Abdullah. Wa Husayna, wa Muhammada, wa Musibata, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.